Hello friends, welcome to Alibro's EduSoft Free Education YouTube channel. Now we are going to discuss Plus 1 Economics first chapter, Indian Economy on the Eve of Independence. Now the discussion is about part 1 of the chapter. So friends, we are going to discuss Economics NCERT chapter 1, Indian Economy on the Eve of Independence. So before entering into the chapter, we need to know about the basic terms that deals with this chapter. Important terms in this chapter includes the following. So before going on into the subject, first we need to understand what the subject commerce is, as economics is a part of commerce. So commerce as a term, also as a subject, can be defined in two manners. Commerce as a subject, it's a stream of education and it can be defined as a study of trade and business activities such as exchange of goods and services from producer to final customer. So as a stream of education, when explaining commerce, it can be defined as a study of trade and business activities. And next, when commerce explained as a term, it is a conduct of trade among economic agents. Here economic agents are included in the conduct of trade. And it is mainly the exchange of goods, services or something of value between businesses and entities. Here the indulging of businesses and entities are happening for the exchange of goods and services. And next term is the national income. National income is one of the important term in economics. It refers to the total value or amount of money earned within a country. It's a total value or amount of money earned within a country. That within a country is very important, as within means domestic. It doesn't involve external relations of the country, only internal trade of the country. Next term is per capita income. Per capita income, it is the measure of amount of money earned per person in a nation or geographic region. So per capita income, it is actually a measure which is used in calculating the amount of money earned per person. That is, per person in a country, the amount he or she earns is calculated. It is based on a particular region or a geographic region. Here we can see the formula for finding per capita income. It is country's national income divided by total population. Per capita income, it can be found out by dividing country's national income and total population of that particular country. Next is the GDP or gross domestic products, which is the main and important topic in economics. Gross domestic product, it refers to the total value of all the goods and services produced in a country in 1 year. Please don't get confused between national income and GDP. And also per capita income and GDP, the topics are entirely different. GDP refers to the total value of all the goods and services. It refers to all the goods and services produced in a country, and it is calculated per year. Every year GDP will be calculated. So GDP, when saying, it will be of 1 year. So these are the most important terms related with this chapter. And next is our main term, economics, which the subject we are dealing with. So economics, it is a branch of social science concerned with production, distribution, consumption of goods and services. It studies how individuals, businessmen, government and nations make choices and how to allocate resources. It's mainly about the allocation of resources. Since the resources are very, very low and the people or the population is very, very high, there need to be an optimum utilization of resources. So that is what the branch or this economics deals with. When we want to say simply, or if we want to say simply what is economics, we will say it's simply the study of scarcity and choice. What to choose between the scarce resources. So the next is the branch of economics. There are two branches or two types. So major types of economics are microeconomics and macroeconomics. Microeconomics, it's actually a small branch, and it's a study of individuals and business decision. It only grows or it only deals with the perspective of a particular individual. Macroeconomics, it is a study of decisions of countries and governments, which means it has a wider perspective compared with microeconomics. Macroeconomics is very wide topic which consists of the not an individual perspective but a wider perspective of nations and governments. We are going into the chapter Indian economy on the eve of independence, and this chapter is mainly dealing with the condition of the Indian economy during the British rule in India. When British made India as their colony, what were the things that happened in India? So, in India, the national income, we studied what is national income and we explained the term before. I think you all remember what is national income. It is a total value or amount of money earned within a country. So that income earned within a country, that was firstly estimated by Dadabhai Naoroji. National income, it was firstly estimated by Dadabhai Naoroji, and national income, it was significantly estimated by V.K.R.V. Rao. So there is a difference between firstly estimated and significantly estimated. This will be very important question for you as an MCQ. So please note, national income, it was firstly estimated by Dadabhai Naoroji, and national income, it was significantly estimated by V.K.R.V. Rao. And many other economists were keen in estimating the national income, as national income is a major measure and it's very important for a country. The other economists include Finlay Shiras, William Digby, R.C. Desai. And these two people, V.K.R.V. Rao and Dadabhai Naoroji, they are also included, but they are the prominent ones. The others include Finlay Shiras, William Digby and R.C. Desai. Please note these things, as you can write these points in between when you are asked to write about the question on national income. So next we are going to say about a brief description of this chapter and which all topics are to be covered in this chapter. This is the introduction part. So the topics we are going to cover in this are, we know that British had made India a colony, and the things which we cover here include the low level of economic development under the colonial rule. When British came here, our development, mainly economic development, had deteriorated. So the low level of economic development under the colonial rule. And next is agricultural sector. Agricultural sector, it faces a stagnation during this colonial rule. And next one is the industrial sector, which was very badly affected by the British colonial rule. And next, the impact on foreign trade. Next, the demographic condition, the occupational structure and the infrastructural facilities. First, we are going to discuss about the agricultural sector. What happens in the agricultural sector? We know that agriculture was a primary sector of India during that time. Now that primary sector is deteriorating in the present scenario. Agricultural stagnation happens during the British colonial rule. The reasons for agricultural stagnation during that time includes the following points. First, low production. The production was very low during that time. Second one, increased indebtedness. Indebtedness means the farmers who are not able to cultivate because of lack of finance, they used to buy credit from landlords who charge exorbitant rate of interest. So what happens is the indebtedness of the farmers increases. So increased indebtedness. When you know that when indebtedness increase, the farmer suicides also increase, as they have no job and they have no finance for cultivation, and frequently the suicides in between the farmers increases. Frequent famines and food shortages. Famines were very common during that time, as the farmers had no option other than farmer suicides. Fourth and fifth one are the important points: frequent famines and food shortages. Fifth one is about the land settlement system like Zamindari, Mahalwari and Rotwari caused problems to the farmers. Land settlement system was a major reason for the stagnation of agriculture. At that time, many land settlement systems were there like Zamindari system, Mahalwari system, Rotwari system, which affects directly the growth and production of the farmers. Next is about a major one, commercialization of agriculture. Commercialization mainly means that the produces which the farmers produce need to be produced or need to be directed to the market for selling. Thereby they can earn money. But at that time, the middleman who used to do this work, they charge exorbitant rate from these farmers. So the farmers are exploited both by the middlemen and both by the landlords. Then at that time, commercialization of agriculture decreases. The last and foremost one, lack of irrigational facilities. Irrigation, is very important for the growth of the agricultural sector. Without water, no plants or no crops can be grown. So irrigational facilities that need to be directed or channelized in a good manner was absent during that time, and lack of irrigational facilities have paved the way to one of the major reasons for the agricultural stagnation. So these are the important points which lead to the agricultural stagnation during the colonial rule. Let me repeat the points once more. Please jot down these points as you can use this while writing the essay questions. First one, low production. Second one, increased indebtedness. Third one, farmer suicides. Fourth one, frequent famines and food shortages. Fifth one, land settlement system like Zamindari, Mahalwari and Rotwari caused problems to farmers. Sixth one, commercialization of agriculture. And last one, lack of irrigational facilities. So friends, please do check out this chart as this will be very important for you. This is agricultural sector on the eve of independence. First one showing the small and fragmented land holdings. So I told you already that it was under the land settlement system. A land holding of the family is particularly held with the landlords, and it is given to a particular family for one time, and that land holding will be mostly scattered in nature. And second one, outdated technology. That the technology which we use today, the bit of it was not there at that time. So old technology and old techniques of production was used, and that also was caused an inefficiency in the agricultural sector. And next one is the inefficient use of fertilizers. The fertilizers and pesticides were not at all good or not at all up to date at that time. So that comes under the outdated technology. Third one is the dependence on rainfall. The rainfall and irrigational facilities, they are interrelated, as we know that during rain, that rain can be channelized through proper irrigational facilities and that can be used for the crops to grow. But that was absent during that time. So totally the agriculture was excessively dependent on rainfall, and thus the channelizing of rainfall was also absent. There occurs stagnation. Next is the low level of production and productivity. So we are actually measuring the output from agricultural sector as per the hectare level. But at that time, output per hectare was extremely low, which lead to further stagnation and deterioration. Next is the subsistence farming. So subsistence farming is actually a very important major measure taken by the farmers at that time. Actually, it was the primary object for a person, but that was also low at that time. Sixth one is the wedge between owners and tillers of the soil. So all owners, they never shared cost of output. Instead, they shared output. Actually, they need to share the cost of output. So these are the 6 major topics which you can add as a mind map for the simple and easy learning. So this is all about the stagnation caused and the reasons for the deterioration in agricultural sector, and next we are going to deal with the impact of British rule on the industrial sector. So you know that the primary sector was agriculture and the secondary sector we are going to deal with is the industrial sector. So in this industrial sector also there was a major impact of British rule happened, and it happened mainly in the handicraft sector or in the handicraft industry. Destruction of handicraft industry is the first and foremost point which we need to remember in the impact of British rule on industrial sector. Then the policies taken by British, it made Indians to buy imported machine goods. This all happened in industrial sector as the British they framed a policy that is only favorable to the British people and very much affecting for the Indian people. We will discuss more about this policy in this chapter. Here I am just drawing a simple mind map of what the policy the British was establishing. Next is the arrival of modern industry. Modern industry and its arrival is very important, and it began in the second half of the 19th century. And during the coming of modern industry, many mills were started in India. Cotton mills were started in Gujarat and Maharashtra, and jute mills in Bengal. This is very important as it is first started in Gujarat and Maharashtra and jute mills in Bengal. TISCO, it started in 1907. TISCO means Tata Iron and Steel Corporation. It started first in India in 1907, which the year is important. Also, sugar, cement and paper industry. Sugar industry, cement industry and paper industry together with cotton mills and jute mills flourished at that time. Next is the deterioration of capital goods industry. Capital goods industry, it also didn't develop during the colonial rule. Capital goods industries are industries which deal with large manufacturing units, and it is of long-term nature. And about the GDP. GDP, it was very less. Before going to GDP, we first studied about what is the definition of GDP. Okay. So GDP refers to the total value of all the goods and services produced in a country in 1 year. GDP, it is very important. It is mainly expressed in percentage. So the GDP during the British rule on the industrial sector was very less. So this is all about the impact of British rule on industrial sector. I'll just repeat the points. Destruction of handicraft industry. Policies taken by British made Indians to buy imported machine-made goods. Modern industry began in the second half of the 19th century, which leads to the establishment of cotton mills and jute mills in Gujarat, Maharashtra and Bengal respectively, and the coming of TISCO in 1907 along with sugar industry, cement industry and paper industry, and the non-development of capital goods and the rate of GDP lessons. This is all about the industrial sector, and next we are going to deal with the foreign trade. As we know, India has been a very important trading nation since ancient time with the help of maritime Silk Route, but the restrictive policies pursued by the colonial government, which we discussed in the industrial sector in the impact of British rule, they made some policies which forced us to import goods from British and exporting the same goods from India to British. And it adversely affected the structure, composition and volume of India's foreign trade. So at that time, India was a major producer of cotton, tea and silk. Other goods and food items were there, but the prominent ones were cotton, tea and silk. Talking about the foreign trade, pre-colonial India was an important trading nation. This is the elaborative of the before the previous slide. That is, India, it was an exporter of primary products such as raw silk, which we see in the previous one, also the cotton, sugar, indigo, etc. And an importer of finished consumer goods like cotton, silk and woolen clothes, as well as capital goods such as machinery produced in Britain. This was the condition before the arrival of British. But after that, what happens? We see and we discussed in the industrial sector, GDP was very low, capital goods industry didn't develop, and the importer and exporter of all these products, it began to diminish. Hence, the Britain, what they do is that they maintained a monopolistic control over India's exports and imports. For that, the British, they established or they framed policy which affects the India's export and import trade between other nations all around the world. The most important characteristic of India's foreign trade was the generation of large export surplus. Because by the generation of more export surplus, we will get earnings from other nations, and also the export surplus that can be used by our domestic needs, which we can satisfy our domestic needs too. But the policy which the British brought in, it all diminished all these policies and this export surplus. Actually, this export surplus we were used for meeting our country's expenses. This is another mind map which we see before in the agricultural sector. Here it is about the foreign trade. State of foreign trade during the colonial rule. First one, what they do is that Britishers' monopoly on foreign trade. We studied before that what they do is they brought in policies on India's export and import. As a result, more than half of India's foreign trade, it was restricted to Britain. What they do is all the materials from India, they exported that materials to Britain, and from there they charge exorbitant prices for our products and imported the same materials that we sent to Britain and imported it to India for long and larger price. So this was their policy. Next is the net exporter of raw material and importer of final goods. Here comes the opening of Suez Canal. Suez Canal, it was opened, the year is very important, it is in 1869. And it avoided to sail around Africa, because before the opening of Suez Canal, India and other countries, they need to sail to Africa for the trade relationships and for making trade. But when they opened Suez Canal, that distance or the time they need to travel for getting the trade relationship, it got decreased. Reduction in the cost of transportation. So thereby opening of Suez Canal, what they do is they reduces the cost of transportation by reducing the distance. Third one and the most important one is the drain of Indian wealth. Drain of Indian wealth mainly deals with the huge export surplus due to huge export volume. In the initial period, India used to get a huge export surplus as we indulge in huge export volume. We used to export in more countries, but after the coming of British, the export of all these goods, mainly raw silk, cotton, sugar, cement, paper, all these decreased. Thus, the export surplus as well as the earnings through that also decreases. And these export surplus, what they do is they used to benefit the Britishers. The export surplus that the British used was mainly for three reasons and three uses. First one is to incur the administrative expenses. When we see about the administrative expenses, it is not related with the administrative expense of India, but with the administrative expense of British. Next is to incur expenses of war fought by the British government. British government, they used to wage wars not only with India but also with other nations, and the expenses which they incurred during the fighting of such wars, they do with the help of the export surplus of India. Third one is to import invisible items. Invisible items here means the services. Services means in India we know that there are skilled people, and they used to export all these people to British for teaching and for other office works. So the import of invisible items. So when we say about the state of foreign trade during the colonial rule, these are the three main important points: Britishers' monopoly on foreign trade, net exporter of raw material and importer of final goods, and drain of Indian wealth. Next topic is the demographic condition. At the time of independence, the population was growing steadily due to decrease in death rate, which improved medical facilities. At that time, there was a decrease happened in death rate, and that improved the medical facilities. But after the coming of British, it all deteriorated. In 1947, the population of India, it was approximately 340 million. The demographic conditions during the coming of British rule are the following. At that time, the overall literacy rate, it was less than 16%. In that, the female literacy, it was just 7%. And the overall mortality rate was very high during that time. And the infant mortality rate, it was 218 per 1000. And the life expectancy, it was also very low to 32 years. When we say about the life expectancy, now we need to know and understand what is the present life expectancy of a country, and it is about 68 approximated. And extensive poverty was present, which means a large scale poverty was happened in during that time. Public health facilities were either unavailable to large chunks of population or were highly inadequate when available. Due to increasing population, the facilities are decreasing and are stable. Public health facilities, it was unavailable for a large group of population. Also, there was a rampant increase in water and airborne diseases. As public health facilities and drainage systems, also the sewage system, it was slow. What happened is there was an increase in the water and airborne diseases. Important point related with demographic condition is the census. We know census, it is the survey which has happened or which is taken of every 10 years. So details about the population of British India, it was first collected through a census in 1881. In first time in 1881, the census happened in India, and it revealed the unevenness in India's population growth. The unevenness we can discuss in the following slides. We know the census, it was conducted in every 10 years, and there can be a date called 1921, which is called the pivot year, within which the demographic transition is related. Before 1921 and after 1921 are the two phases which is divided in the demographic transition. Before 1921, India was in the first stage of demographic transition, and after 1921, India began to travel in the second stage of transition. So this is all about the census, and now we are still traveling and we are continuing in the second stage of the demographic transition, which means high birth rate and low death rate.